Our gospel reading for this morning comes from Mark's gospel, the 8th chapter. The disciples have begun to figure out who Jesus is. Peter has confessed him as Messiah, but they clearly don't understand what that means, as will be evident in today's reading. Listen for what the Spirit would say to us through these words. Then Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up the cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Satan shows up in our reading this morning, and Satan has been in the news of late thanks to the Republican presidential campaign, specifically a speech given by Rick Santorum. Now, I'm not exactly sure why this speech has become an issue. Santorum gave it quite some time ago, back in 2008, to Ave Maria University, a small conservative Catholic college. But once it started traveling the rounds on the internet, it was all over the news. Now, in this speech, Santorum pushes the rather odd notion that the United States has been just about the only thing Satan was worried about or was attacking for the last 200 years or so. And the most fertile ground for Satan's efforts were apparently, or is apparently, college campuses and mainline Protestant congregations. Now, Santorum's not really being anti-Protestant on the last one. He simply says that America was founded as a mostly Protestant nation, and so Satan went after that. Now, in my mind, if you want to argue the case for a personal father of lies who is going about causing all sorts of horror and mischief in the world, then it seems to me that things like the Holocaust and apartheid in South Africa and genocide in Rwanda and the shelling of civilians in Syria should surely make any short list ahead of OSU and Ohio Wesleyan. So I'm guessing that my and Santorum's understanding of Satan are just a little different. Now, the Bible may not be a great deal of help straightening out or clearing up the differences Santorum and I have. Satan appears in quite a few different guises in Scripture. Sometimes he's not a bad guy at all, but is sort of a prosecuting attorney for God. Other times, Satan seems to be blamed for things that aren't actually his doing. For example, lots of people talk about how Satan tempted Adam and Eve in the garden, but if you look the story up, you'll find that Satan is not mentioned at all there. But by Jesus' day, most Jews had come to think of Satan as a bad guy, an opponent of God in some way. And so it was typical to speak of Satan as the cause of misery or of illness. But an actual being named Satan shows up rarely in the Gospels. In Mark's Gospel, it happens only twice. The first is when Jesus is tempted in the wilderness, and the appearance is quite brief. Jesus was in the wilderness 40 days, tempted by Satan, and he was with the wild beasts, and the angels waited on him. That's it. And our reading today is the one time in Mark's Gospel that Jesus actually speaks to Satan. And of course, his words are actually directed at Peter. Now, I think that Jesus' words to Peter may be of a lot more help to us than fanciful notions of Satan attacking college campuses. See, according to Jesus, the Satan problem is much more personal and much more immediate. And it happens, at least according to Jesus, because we set our mind on human things rather than the things of God. And this problem seems to be related to where we stand with respect to Jesus. In front of or behind. And this becomes even clearer when Jesus continues to speak as he goes on and talks about what it takes to be one of his followers. It gets lost in the translation. But the word behind is actually used twice in quick succession by Jesus. First, in his command to Peter/Satan to get behind me. And then again when he talks about self-denial. Translated literally, what Jesus says is, whoever or if any want to follow behind me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. There's a scene at the end of the movie National Lampoon's Animal House where the crazy frat brothers at Delta House disrupt the 1962 homecoming parade at Faber College. The members of Delta House are a motley assortment of misfits and ne'er-do-wells. And they are despised and persecuted by both the dean of the college and by the members of the prestigious Omega House. But the Deltas get their revenge at that parade. And one part of their rather ridiculous plan involves someone grabbing the baton from the drum major of the marching band, knocking him off to the side and taking his place. And this substitute drum major then leads the band off course into a dead-end alley where the band piles up against the back wall, still marching in place. And when we last see them, they are still there, marching away, crammed up against that wall. And the gag works to some degree because we know that for marching bands to do their thing, they are supposed to have a certain kind of military precision and discipline. For them to be good marching bands, they have to go where the director says go. Imagine a marching band where the trumpet player says, you know, I'd really like to do something different today. Drum major, would you come with me? Ridiculous. But that's exactly what Peter does with Jesus when he tries to straighten him out about the cross thing. He wants Jesus to follow him. But then who among us doesn't? Most of us don't take it quite to the extremes of, say, Joel Osteen. We don't genuinely expect that God should make sure we have a high-paid job, a beautiful spouse, and a parking space right at the front entrance to the mall. But to varying degrees, most all of us think that God, Jesus, should orbit around a little universe that has me as its center. And I think this focus on ourselves is precisely what Jesus is talking about when he says a human point of view. And in our culture, we are so focused on the individual. We are so used to being catered to as consumers that this tendency that we see in Peter has only grown stronger in us. We want Jesus and religion to meet our needs, not tell us what to do. What's this cross thing? What do you mean, self-denial? That's not what I'm looking for. Most of us are familiar with the joke about how men won't stop to ask for directions, even when they're hopelessly lost. I had a friend that once proudly claimed this tendency, saying, "I may be lost, but I'm making great time." But what is it about us that would prefer to stay lost rather than have someone tell us how to get there? Have someone tell us what to do? You know, if you want to worry about Satan, I'd worry a lot less about grandiose cosmic plans to indoctrinate and corrupt college students at universities. And I'd worry a lot more about this basic human problem. This problem we share with Peter. We're not really sure we want Jesus giving us directions. And on this one, I think the women join right in with the men. You know, I think that most people who are drawn to Jesus, to the church, to some sort of faith or spirituality, are looking for something. They sense that there's something missing, that there's something not quite right with their lives, and they're looking for something more. And in a way, they are lost. Maybe very lost, or maybe just a little lost, but lost nonetheless. We come here seeking some direction, some guidance. But when Jesus says, "Follow me," those old human habits kick in. And we get in front of Jesus and say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, Jesus, not this way, that way. Get behind me, Satan. Let me show you the way," says Jesus. Get behind me and follow. I really know where I'm going. All praise and glory to the God who comes to us in Jesus to show us the way. Thanks be to God.